You're watching Sci-Fi Saturday. Discussion and analysis of all your favorite sci-fi TV shows. Only on the Anthony James YouTube channel. The Mandalorian Chapter 12 was written by Jon Favreau and directed by Carl Weathers, Greef Karga himself.
We've only just begun.
This episode, titled The Siege, featured now Magistrate Greef Karga, who's in charge of the planet of Navarro. Now, Navarro you might recognize from the first season. That was where the Bounty Hunters Guild was. It's also where the Beskar armorer for the Watch was as well. So all those scenes took place there. Now, when we get there, we see that the planet has changed an awful lot. Greef and Cara Dune are doing a fantastic job. They've got a school going. Kara's beating the living hell out of any bad guys. In fact, she comes straight into the episode swinging, straight in swinging. She's cleaning up this one-horse town, and I'm here for it. I am loving that she is sort of the one-woman police department of this little town, or the planet in general, probably. I don't know if the planet is any more than the actual settlement that they have, or whether that's all it is. But they seem to be cleaning it up. I love the idea of having a school. That's something that I've only seen in Star Wars a few times, and the droid obviously is giving the lessons, and obviously we got if you were a young child and you had force powers, what would you do? You'd force power some little blue macaroons your way. Of course you would. That's what I'd be doing. It's so realistic for the only times we see the child using force powers is, one, to protect its parents, and two is to get treats. So it's just absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to mention it too much here because I talked about it a lot in the last episode, but there was definitely a continuation of the whole Mando child parent-child relationship here. The idea of trying to get the child to plug in the right cables. Come on, Mando. There was no way that child was going to ever do that correctly. Oh, that puppet was so cute whenever it electrocuted itself. Oh, it was just so cute. So obviously we have Gina Carano, who plays Cara Dune. She comes back in, absolutely brilliant. That woman is a beast. She's beaten the living hell out of men sideways. You know what? And it's so believable. Obviously, she's a UFC fighter, so you'd have to expect that anyway. And I just was loving to see her back. Now, obviously, I've talked before about the idea of these characters in the Mandalorian universe, so to speak, coming back into Mando's life. One character that I wasn't expecting to come back was Mithril, who's played by Horatio Sands.
French toast, no sugar. All right? Sorry about that.
Of course, he was frozen in carbonite in the first ever episode of The Mandalorian, because he was the first bounty that we saw the Mandalorian retrieving. He's now trying to work off his time by working for Greef Karga, and he's a nervous ball of nerves. And I enjoyed the little sort of comic play with him the whole time, and they made him go out onto the ledge and disable the cooling system. And geez, I wouldn't want to be him in this episode, to be honest with you. I think I'd rather be frozen in carbonite than doing what he was doing in this episode. But interesting to see him back. Wasn't expecting to see that character back, but He was a welcome addition. He was a welcome addition, definitely. So as I mentioned, Cara Dune does a lot in this episode. She's beaten the living hell out of all these bandits or thieves or criminals. She's leading the charge into the station when they eventually go to siege it. She's driving like a badass, driving away from TIE fighters. Oh, it was just so cool. She had so much to do in this episode. She really came into the series with a bang, and it was just absolutely amazing. It's like, okay, you know who this character is. Let's just let her do some really cool stuff. Speaking of that car chase, where the speed bikers came out first, the scout troopers came out, and it was so dynamic. It was actually really well done. I enjoyed the dynamics of that chase scene. It was really engaging, edgy of seat stuff. Whenever they just flew off the edge of the station, and they landed on top of Mithril's speeder, and then off they go in this massive tank of a vehicle. But what was really cool is that the scout troopers just flew off the edge of the station as well, and it was really like they were trying to get their speed bikes under control, and they was like zigzagging, like, you know, a couple of them actually crashed into rocks and died. So it was really cool, that idea of, you know, they had to stop them, because obviously we'll talk about later, they've just found out something that they cannot know. So I love the idea of these scout troopers and then the stormtroopers, the TIE fighters as well, you know, flying, and they were just racing. They were trying to kill them as quick, like they really wanted to get them. And I really felt the desperate nature in those troopers. It was really, really well done. Just even the way they were controlling the bikes and trying, like, you know, smacking into rocks and hitting each other, and they had to get them. And of course they didn't get them. So they've got away with the secret now. Now, whether they know what the secret means, we don't know. But they've got away with the secret, and I'm sure Moff Gideon won't be happy about that. So whenever Mando arrives, first of all, into the town, onto the planet, I think it's so funny that well, first of all, I clocked that one of those guys who was working on his ship was going to be a bit shifty, because as soon as he looks around, one of them is like got a weird look to him and staring at him, and I sort of clocked, oh, there's something up there. But then obviously you forget about it, you get lost in the episode, and then it comes back at the end. They've planted a device on his ship. So we'll wait and see that. I've got a few predictions about what might happen in that next episode based on that. So I'll get there. But as I was gonna say, in the chase, whenever the TIE fighters eventually like flew up, and then Mando came in with the Razor Crest, and he was like, you know, he was piloting that thing way better than I've ever seen him pilot before. Like I mentioned in the few episodes ago that Mando is all rough and ready. It's not about style. Like this was done in a bit of style, to be honest with you. He's actually bringing a bit of style out in this episode. Maybe he's showing off to his old friends, but he basically came in, killed all the TIE fighters, and there was a brilliant moment when he finally killed like throughout this episode, I felt a swelling of Star Wars. Now that might seem an obvious thing to say because we're watching The Mandalorian. It is Star Wars, but throughout the episode, I felt the swell of Star Wars coming up and coming back and coming back. It started with me because we're obviously going into this station where all the stormtroopers are. You've got the Imperial officers. You know, the uniforms they've got. Even the panels on the walls look like original trilogy panels. You know, I was really in that mode. And then whenever he's in the Razor Crest and killing the TIE fighters, there's a real orchestral overture comes, and it's like a real swell of orchestral music, and it felt really like Star Wars to me. And then of course we get like the slow crawl underneath the, is it a what do you call it, Moff Gideon's ship? Yeah. So the slow crawl underneath that before going, it really felt like Star Wars to me. This episode, they all feel like Star Wars, but this felt like Star Wars was like bleeding out of the seams of this episode. It was slowly building up the whole time, and then just like boom, okay, we've got Star Wars now. And I the fact that Ahsoka Tano is going to be in the episode soon, I still think she's coming in next episode. And you've got Moff Gideon, who's got the dark saber. Like, are we actually going to get a lightsaber battle, lightsaber duel in this show, this season? Like, that would be mad, wouldn't it? Like, I don't know if they would give it to us that early, but it would be mad. Like, so I'm interested to see that. But yeah, as I say, it just felt so much like Star Wars. It was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. I just loved it. Right. We got to talk about it. We got to talk about the big secret they found out. So they found out. Now, obviously, it's speculation, but I think it's speculation that we all can agree on. It seems like they're going down the route that they're using Force-sensitive beings, namely the child, to develop a cloning system of some sort. And this is obviously, now, I think it's obvious that we would speculate this. It's not confirmed yet, but I think it's pretty clear. This is where Snoke comes from. Emperor Snoke. Supreme Chancellor Snoke. I'm pretty sure this is where he's going to come from. As soon as I saw the thing floating, I was like, oh, is that a scar in the head? Maybe that's an early copy of Snoke. Straight away, I thought that. And also there was a few little things that I noticed. Obviously, whenever they were approaching the desk, the two officers, one of them went, destroy it, you know, and straight away it's like, oh, they're trying to hide something here. They can't let these people find what's on this computer. And then, unfortunately, they didn't destroy it completely, because then they had a little hologram come up. And what was interesting that the doctor said. Now, I caught up on a few things. First thing was they were replicating cells. So that tells me cloning. It tells me that they're trying to replicate force-sensitive beings' cells. But also, like, that's obvious. But also, you might have noticed something. They were talking about the M count of the blood. M count. Now, M count to me, straight away I was like, oh, midichlorians. Now, I thought that was really clever. Because I know Dave Filoni would want to make it consistent throughout the whole... he wants the whole canon to be consistent. So the idea of bringing midichlorians into it in a real subtle way like this, like they might never mention it again, but the fact that they said M count makes, okay, midichlorians are a thing in this universe too. It is actually consistent throughout Star Wars now. Whatever you think of the prequels, I think we can all agree that it's cool that it's consistent, okay? So I really, really enjoyed that. I really, really liked that they mentioned the M count. And it's also, they didn't even say midichlorians. They said it in a way that was alluding to midichlorians. And like, it's cool, like sort of like the M count, you know what I mean? I thought that was pretty cool. So I've got a few theories based on that. So one of my theories is, well, first of all, my first theory obviously is still that Ahsoka Tano is going to appear next episode. Dave Filoni is writing and directing that episode. I think it's probably a given, in my opinion, that Ahsoka Tano is going to appear next episode. As for my other theory, I think that by the end of this season, Moff Gideon is going to get his hands on this child. And I think we might even end the season with the child in Moff Gideon's control. Because they need the blood of the child to create Snoke now. Well, at least to continue that development. And we know, based on the sequel trilogy, that Snoke exists. So they must actually get there. Now, whether that's with the child, it might not be. Like maybe the Emperor, who obviously is still alive based on the 9th film, whatever you think of that. But based on the 9th film, he's still alive. He's hooked up to all this stuff. So maybe they actually find... Like maybe he calls out to them and they find that he's still alive, and then they use him to create Snoke. Now I know he said he made Snoke in the 9th film, but does that necessarily mean that he made him from his own body, or does it mean that he just was in control of making him? So it's up in the air. Is the child going to be what is part of create Snoke, or is it actually going to be using the blood and the cells of the Emperor himself? That's what I'm interested to see. Like, it'll be really, really interesting to see if the Emperor appears in this show, because now that you are going down this route, you're going down this route of, you know, Jedi and the Emperor, the Empire, or the Fallen Empire, the New Republic. You're going down this route of Star Wars, basically, like the proper Star Wars with lightsaber duels, and you're going down this route. I'm really wondering, are they going to have the Emperor in the show? It would be really interesting if they did. I know that they're also planning a load of different spin-offs and stuff, so maybe they'll have the Emperor in a separate show. But I'd imagine, like, this has been set up from the first season now, this whole cloning program they've got going on. So you'd imagine now this show is like one big origin story for Snoke, in a way. I'm really loving that. I think it's really cool. Maybe they capture Ahsoka Tano, and maybe she becomes the blood or the cells that create Snoke. Jeez, that would be strange. That would be really, really interesting. But yeah, so plenty to think about coming out of this episode. To be honest with you, I'm actually more excited from what I saw this episode than what I was last. Now, I'm not saying I think the last episode was a better episode than this. This episode was really good in my opinion. It suffered a little bit, I think what The Mandalorian does quite a lot. But it's the way that the show has to be. But it's still, I think this episode suffered for it, is that it was very much like, okay, I get to a new place, I got a job for you, here you go. And it's classic storytelling. It's like D&D/video game style storytelling. I really enjoy it. I just maybe would have liked to spend about another 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes catching up with our old friends before being thrown straight back into the siege, straight back into the fighting. I love the episode, but if I was going to say something that I did that was maybe not up to it for me, it would be that. I think episode 3 was really good. And most people I hear are saying that episode 3 was their favorite of the season so far. Personally, I probably would go with episode 1, and that's purely just because I'm a lover of westerns. Episode 3 was fantastic, though. I really like episode 2 as well. This show, guys. This show. Unbelievable. So, make sure if you want to get leave a comment below. Let me know what you liked about the show. What do you think of my theories? Do you have any theories about what you think is going to happen? Apart from that, like the video. That'd be great for me. Can you also please subscribe to the channel? Every single Saturday, I come out with a Star Wars Mandalorian video. I also come out with a Star Trek Discovery. So if you like Star Trek, check that out. Me and my friend Emmett talk through that. All right, guys. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next week. You're watching Sci-Fi Saturday. Discussion and analysis of all your favorite sci-fi TV shows. Only on the Anthony James YouTube channel.